Hey, this is James Governor from Red Monk. I am excited to be here because I have my buddy Charity Majors from Honeycomb, and Charity always has lots of great ideas, many of which he even puts into production because test in prod or live a lie.
Right.
But yeah, you have been writing a lot. You've obviously been thinking a lot about the impact of AI, and in fact, so much so, Charity, that we'll sort of get to this. But I had a thought today, in another conversation. I was like, you know what? Charity may well, I don't. We're not going to get to it. I'm going to do it right now. Thinking about the nature of the harness and where one lives, sort of in the stack, and kind of thinking that Honeycomb arguably is going to be moving up the stack, and will have sort of like an operational excellence harness rather than just being an observability platform. Because if we think about all of one thing that you and your organization have done, I think, over the years, is just done such a good job of like codifying engineering knowledge and culture. Take something like testing in production. That is something that you have written about, have made very clear, have made as a set of virtues and values that frankly could end up being something that a machine could read and use as the basis of inputs and outputs and,
Yeah.
and how you run your systems in production.
I like where you're going with this. I think we have increasingly come to the realization that people's change budgets are so low because it's all the change budget is being sucked up by AI. And so most people have just decided observability is a solved problem. Yeah, we know our solution is shitty, but we don't have any cycles to try and make it better. It's three pillars, it's metrics, logs, and traces. It's that's what we're doing, and that's so. As you know, we have never really thought that that's the right way to make sense of your systems,
Hmm.
but you can only, you need to go where people are willing to accept change. And I think that the next great frontier is knitting together determinism and non-determinism. What
Yes.
does it even mean? What is what I love about AI is that it is finally forcing everyone to do all the things that they needed to do all along, but couldn't get the investment time or what, like instrumentation with traces. The trace is the source of truth. The trace is part of the product, which is something we've been saying for how long is that this needs to be a product decision, not an infrastructure decision. And I feel like agents in production are forcing the point on so many of these that it's so exciting.
That is exactly right. I think so. Your argument about production excellence. I think one of the things is it's there are lots of dimensions to this, and certainly when I've spoken to you about like progressive delivery, it's been on the notion of like there are so many things that you need to do. There's actually a set of associated disciplines being rather than just one thing, and there are possibly multiple entry points, but there are so many things you need to do. But there is no doubt that AI is a forcing factor. Where look, if you've got shitty processes, poor documentation, all the knowledge is in people's heads, um, and then
It's
you
not available to your AI if it's
it's
all
not
locked.
available to your AI, right? And so it's very hard to get the benefits if you haven't done all of that groundwork. And this is groundwork that there are many reasons that we should have done this.
Yes.
And there are every few years, I think a forcing factor comes along, but it's pretty clear that you're not going to be able to build, deploy, manage, and iterate on software as effectively as your peers if they are doing a better
So
job of those things.
I don't know if you saw the piece that I published at like 11 p.m. last night. But it was about so a week or two ago, I wrote a piece about AI enthusiasts versus skeptics
Mhm.
and got a lot of really great responses. And so there were two buckets of responses, technical and ethical. So I took the technical ones first because that's easiest. But basically, just arguing that non-determinism is going to take more discipline from us. not less.
Mhm.
Gonna take a lot more engineering discipline. And so all of these which is not the direction I think you'll agree that the industry has been running in over the past year. But my hope is that this is the year where we start to go, okay, every CEO wants these their shiny, they want their fancy AI cookies. Well, discipline comes first, then you get cookies. Because that is like this is what Dora says, this is what Space said, this is what all of the big engineering, leaders and brands are saying is that you need to bring discipline to get predictable results out, and value is backed by durability.
Yep.
So, my hope is that I mean, this is an opportunity, whether we take it or not is kind of up to us.
Well, my friend Thomas Otter always said, "You have to eat your broccoli if you wanna get your ice cream."
Exactly.
And that's sort of where we are now, that people really need to start eating the broccoli.
Yeah.
I mean, Lord knows they've been drinking the Kool-Aid. So,
Mhm. Whole feast.
yeah, okay, so, good.
But the other thing I will say about that is this is the biggest opening we've had in my lifetime to bring our engineering values to the mainstream.
Mhm,
They've always been out of reach of the median engineer because because code has been so hard to write and
yeah.
so time consuming and it's taken up all of the oxygen. There are so many ways in which we can leverage this technology to bring it to the median engineering team because because the economics of code have just been upended. I don't know, have you been following the stuff that Fowler has been writing about with the Phoenix architectures?
I am gonna admit ignorance, which I hate doing. Because
Ah,
oh god, you've really got me there, Charity.
oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
and I'm certainly, more than familiar with his work, so I'm
Yeah.
slightly disappointed that I have not been following this.
Well, for your listeners' sake, I'll catch them up on what he's
Yes.
been. Chad Fowler is the guy who coined the term immutable infrastructure back in 2013. Now, I am just barely old enough that my first job when I was a teenager, my job title was system administrator. So I lived through you lived through the whole uh, handcrafted servers
Mhm.
to cattle, right? I was not aware of what was going on at the time. I was just a kid, but like I lived through it. And I remember how grumpy the sysadmins were and how it seemed like the world was ending. And I feel like there's so much resonance to what's happening right now with the handcrafted code because Chad has been writing about how there's so much bound up in lines of code. It's the only record we have of what bugs have been fixed, what users expect, but the code is not the source of truth. The system is the source of truth.
Mhm.
And that's why every single API rewrite and legacy code, why we literally have to find these edges and these behaviors and these contracts by breaking them. It's the only way. It's miserable. And now, with the economics of code being upended the way they are, now code is cheap. Now we should be able to have different artifacts. We should be able to generate the code from the architecture. We should be able there are all of the now listen, anyone who's ever done a really gnarly, hairy database migration should be a little bit dubious of how far we can actually go with extrapolating and writing down users' expectations and then developing the spec. But I believe so strongly that any any movement we can take in that direction will be so good for the industry. It's all about bringing discipline to our software. This is still an engineering problem, James.
Well, I mean, an engineering problem, but I think people sometimes forget that the engineering problems are, of course, people problems. Uh,
Oh, true.
so, how far do you think and it's interesting because you caveated there. You said, "Anyone that's done this knows that maybe it's harder than it sounds." Because I think we are at a moment there is a bit of a sort of, there are those that would literally be like, "Oh, no, they're all solved problems now."
I know. That's adorable.
Any problems to do with code are
Yeah.
solved problems, right?
I
That
look forward to seeing how their lives go.
right. Yeah, I mean, I've gotta say, um right, I don't have to say, but I'm gonna say, I do think that, like, one of the shittiest things in life is maintaining software.
Yes.
Like, it is not fun, and if you're like there is a view now, I think, that will use agents to build the software, and then we'll just use agents to maintain the software, and therefore will suffer no pain, and I'm kind of
I Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. I I do think that there's a part of why it's so hard to talk about this is because there's a sort of fracturing of reality, right? I think that there are some categories of software where that's absolutely true. I think that the software, the personal apps, right? Solved problem. Absolutely. Personal productivity, toy apps and everything. I love this for us. But like Slack, anything that a billion users use, anything that has high expectations,
Mhm,
so the interesting edges for me are wherever the world of bits meets the world of atoms or cells or molecules or whatever. And so on the one hand, you've got persistence problems, famously difficult, right? Those are not going to be vibe coded away anytime soon.
mhm,
And on the other side, you have user interfaces, right? And the last thing in the world that I want is to wake up every morning and see my buttons move around a little bit in my Slack app. I don't want that. There Trust is built through friction for the most part.
mhm.
And we want our friction to be stable,
Yeah,
right? So I think that there are lots of hard problems that remain. I just think that the last year has unleashed enough change that it will take us a generation or two to digest it, even if the AI developments stop today.
100%. Tell me about the balance between, and this is kind of interesting, I sort of wish that I had Kate here because this is an ongoing sort of internal Red Monk debate. I am very, um, interested in your thoughts on what should be deterministic and, like, what should not, and how that plays out. I thought there was a really brilliant talk last week at Fastly's show where it was Accelerate London, and they were talking about the fact that at least with their application firewall, when they were developing, it's like first pass, use AI, but then use that to use AI to generate
Yes,
deterministic code so that it is
yes,
repeatable and performant, right?
yes. Yes,
So,
that is the best of both worlds. Exactly. LLMs are brilliant for exploration, for prototyping, for experimenting, for like I think one of the best things that has happened to us with the advent of AI, maybe even I'll just say the best thing, is it has forced us to ask ourselves again and again and again, what does good look like?
mhm,
What would better look like? What would great look like? And you notice like the first generation of that debate was all about fast. Can we do it faster? I mean, sure, who wouldn't want to wave their wand and do all their work in an hour instead of it? Sure, but it's ultimately pretty boring, right? Because it's the same work. What if it's better? What if it's fast? What if fast is often part of it, but it's rarely all of it, right? And we're not used to even asking ourselves that question. But I think that's exactly right. The fast part is figuring out the fast part. That has always been the slow part, right? We can do that much more faster now. And we can do it much better now. We can try more things. We can talk to more people. We can be more curious. We can try more prototypes. But when it comes down to something you want to rely on, you're back to determinism.
mhm. And I think, like I've been saying that like the best token is the one that you don't have to burn.
Ah,
It just it's living in this world. I'm struggling a bit with this the notion of just shoveling all of the money into Nvidia
no.
and
Uh,
OpenAI and Anthropic. I mean,
I feel like I would respect these vibe coders, token maxers more if they were bragging about how much profit they were making,
mhm.
not how much profit they were shoveling into the maws of these giant companies.
Yeah, I mean that would sort of make sense, right? Like
Yeah.
this is what I have generated as
Is it
opposed to
time
like
for token binning?
I mean, I don't know. It's so and honestly, it is weird to me. I mean, I had a good conversation again. So I was talking to some folks at UK AI company, pre-LLM company called Turing Tech, and I think the really interesting thing that actually token maxing should be about maximizing efficiency. This
Mm.
bragging about what we've spent is so freaking weird.
It's like driving a Hummer down the street.
It is a bit like that, or just wearing the most expensive. sort of
gaudy, yeah,
label gaudy thing that you could possibly have. I don't. It's a bit of a. Yeah. I've found that whole thing to be quite strange.
yeah, quite gross.
Um, and just especially when you make that a corporate standard. And we've seen recently, sort of, Microsoft saying, "Wait, we're spending how much?" And
Yeah,
Amazon saying, "Oh, yeah, maybe these leaderboards of how many tokens you're burning are not a good idea."
my god. I've been going nuts with the sticker machine, and I've got one that says, "Goodhart was here."
Sorry, I didn't even hear that.
Oh, I've been going nuts with my little AI, like, ChatGPT sticker machine, and I have a sticker that says, "Goodhart was here."
Oh, okay. There you go. So, and there's parts of me worried, um, that we're not gonna follow a line on this conversation, but I think that was always gonna be the case. So here's the thing, talking about the difference, I think part of the problem that we've just sort of described is to do with the fact that so much of what LLMs unleashed has been about individual
Mm,
productivity. It has been, here is a thing that I can make. And this makes me, I mean, whether or not the AI is a god, it makes us feel godlike.
yeah.
And that, I mean, for people that have, a tendency to post as madness or something, some very interesting things are happening. But it's just like, like having superpowers. Um, and in some cases, you'll begin to see this open source where, Mitchell Hashimoto recently said, why would you have other people in your project, right? You can build the whole thing yourself. Like, I don't need pull requests. I don't. So, or Ladybird, they said, well, a smaller team. We just don't need outside contributions anymore. But I think, and you've spoken about what does good look like. If we think about the whole point of observability is the feedback loops and understanding the behavior of a system, understanding what it means for the user. I think that the token maxing comes from a point of view which is actually about an appearance of individual productivity. Whereas really what we need to be focusing on, and I think where we as an industry need to go, and you said, what would be great this year is if we began to focus on engineering as a team sport and what is the role of AI there.
Yeah, I yeah, it's interesting. Part of me wonders if this is just always I think about the early programmers, and I think they felt very similar to the way that we feel with AI, just like, "Oh my god, it's a magic world. I have superpowers." And there were some less than savory aspects of that, but I think it's also just very natural. But it is sort of weird that we don't really see people doing work in public about how they're cooperating, do we?
No, that's yeah. At least I'm not seeing it.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not
this is how AI made me much better at collaborating.
Well, if I'm, able to do everything myself, why wouldn't I want to? Well, I can think of a bunch of reasons. You might die. Do you want your work to live on?
Mhm.
You might want to go on vacation. Do you want your work to be relied on by other people? I mean, I think this sounds like kindergarten logic, but, we are a cooperative species and it is our superpower. Um, this madness must come to an end, right?
I mean, I kind of think so. One of the most exciting projects that I've seen in recent times is, and it's largely because of the social aspects, is called npmx. So it's like a search front end on top of npm, and it has lots of nice um, bells and whistles. It's the kind of experience you would want for the front end of a package manager. Their aim is not to replace npm, but certainly to help people to get more value out of it. And so we look at Matteo and Dan Rowe, who sort of initially led the project. The degree to which they leaned into collaboration was just really awesome. And, and it was sort of interesting and weird because it's also the first, like, I mean, it's the first great sort of open source project of Bluesky. It's not, it happens to use App Proto, but it's not an App Proto app in itself. It isn't a, but they use
What's
that network to build a, a community. And so, and seeing like the number of posts I've seen from first time open source contributors going and being like, oh, we're part of this like npmx world now. I What I find
Yes.
fascinating about is this is the opposite of the direction of travel I'm seeing a lot of the industry moving, but I think there
Yeah.
has to be room for learning and community and designing great experiences together.
Yeah, totally. I mean, have you seen Honeycomb's Canvas?
I have seen Canvas.
It's basically, somebody called it Google Docs plus, I don't remember what the visual thing was, but, like, for collaborating on an incident, like, I'm seeing this, and you
Yep.
just drop it in. You drop a little graph, and people are collaborating. Um, Even in a world of agents, there are things that you want other people for.
So
Yeah.
lean into that a little bit more because I think, given we've got you here, you do know a little bit about Honeycomb. And I have said that this AI thing and certainly engineering has to be a team sport. And we've taken probably 23 minutes to get to you actually talking about one of your products. So, how did Canvas emerge? Like, what was the specific thinking there? Tell us a bit about that, because I think the Honeycomb AI journey has been like super fascinating because
Yeah.
I think for many of us, you look initially and one's a bit skeptical, then you're like, oh, this could be good, and then you lean into that, and I think now you're at a new place in terms of your thinking about where it can take you as a company and where you can take it. So yeah, talk a bit about that, like the sort of the team sport of observability.
So, in the it actually feels like a real culmination of something that I have always wanted. I I always wanted social debugging, like it was part of our earliest design discussions was how can we help people collaborate in the middle of an incident? You're all huddled, it's 2 a.m., it's dark out, everyone's asleep, and you and two or three of your colleagues are up trying to save the world, right? And it's so essentially multiplayer. Um, but we were never able to. I mean, it's not an easy thing to build, and nobody was asking for it.
If I send enough Slack messages to enough people in the
Yeah,
team and tell
yeah,
everyone else to fuck off, then
yeah.
hopefully good things might happen. I mean, it's hey, I've seen like yeah, um
So I had nothing to do with coming up with it, which is why
right.
I'm like doubly, triply just like tickled because it fulfills so it's the it's so much better than I ever hoped it would be or ever could have been given the technology of ten years ago. But
Mhm.
I love because I think that it speaks to something that's so real and essential about collaborative understanding. I was having a conversation with Jessitron right after OliCon, which I'm so sad you missed. It was such a good event.
Yeah, that was bad.
I have always the events that I enjoy going to, that I enjoy inviting, I don't wanna go sit in I can sit at home and watch talks. Talks are great. I'm always grateful if people give great talks, but, like, it's about showing up to a place, meeting people,
Mhm.
talking to them, meeting new people, hearing their stories, and I just felt like the whole thing had a buzz. Anyway, Jessica Jordan and I were talking about in an era of agents human contact is just so I'm reconsidering all we're an all remote team. I know I'm all over the place here. We're an all remote team. And I hate that talking to my coworkers so often feels very non-distinguishable from talking to agents.
Mhm.
And I'm looking for ways to re I want talking to people to feel like people, right?
Mhm.
I have these foundational experiences at Linden Lab, at Parse, people that I spend all this time with. I don't have the same experience of the people that I work with at Honeycomb. And Jessitron was reminding me of that old definition of consciousness. There is something that it is like to be a person. And so when you're talking about collaboration, I think where my mind is going is bringing the human back to collaborating. Like, it shouldn't feel like it feels like when you're collaborating with an agent. And this is what I love about Canvas. It does not feel like you're collaborating with agents who are just like helpfully. You're collaborating with people who are people. There is something it is like to be them, right? And you have a mental model of each other, and you can see where each other is coming. This is hard to describe because it's all very visual, but is that making any sense?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm just wondering, I mean, I'm assuming you have some nice screencasted explanations that we can include in
Yes.
the
Yes.
comments below or in the the description,
I,
so that we can point people at some documentation about
yeah,
what Canvas looks like.
I'll give you I'll give you some videos, but I guess in summary, I think teams should be looking right now for things to help them collaborate with each other that feel different from collaborating with agents, because
Mhm.
otherwise, what's the point?
Okay, so we've got where does non-deterministic meet deterministic, and obviously you were doing that before LLMs, but um, and then this sort of interesting, almost counterintuitive, and I think it talks a bit to like you talked about the points of friction. Humans actually are points of friction. That's
Oh, yeah.
that's sort of the point, and
Kind of what we do.
it's yeah, it's kind of what we do, and for better for worse, it can be incredibly infuriating,
Yes.
but also incredibly powerful. Um,
And in fact, I'm working right now on a doc that we hope to share externally by the end of the month, but it's AI norms and values. What are our working agreements? And when you say it that way, it sounds like, well, the subject of the sentence is AI norms and values, but it's actually us, right? The subject is us. And how do our or norms and values need to adjust or adapt in an era of AI?
mhm.
Because technology always it resets the bar, right? It changes what is expected of us. It changes what great means. And to your point about communication, I've been trying to figure out how to write down, yes, other people are friction. Yes. So how do we what expectation do we set about what we put in front of them? Like, it's our job to guard our own minds and attention. It's also our job to protect each other's minds and attention. So for example, if you're dumping a Claude doc at them, is that okay? Is it not? When is it? Should it be? Uh, I'm curious what you think.
Well, it is interesting that you should ask me because I too have been asking some questions about AI norms and values. Because, I mean, Red Monk, uh, y- I mean, I think we've been described in this way, and I'm proud of it, as sort of authentic. Um, we have a voice. I think our individual RICs have voices that we celebrate. We don't expect everyone to sound the same. We've always actively not wanted to polish off
Yeah,
the voices and make them sound like a voice. We
totally.
don't we don't have any aspiration to have a single voice.
'Cause
Uh,
that would lose credibility with your market.
and yeah, I don't think that helps credibility. And so um uh AI does tend to rather sandpaper things off. And so I think we've got some as a firm some really important questions here because authenticity, trust, credibility, those are the things that make us valuable.
Yes.
Now, are there some things that AI is LLMs profoundly good at? Yes, absolutely. So, my colleague Kate Holdoff is like, let's look at the current open source policies and license changes across a number of projects. You could literally spend weeks going and reading every single policy in order to extract any diffs there have been, or
Yeah.
what the current state of the art is. Um and she was able to do that work supported by AI much more, very quickly and effectively. Stephen O'Grady, my business partner, I don't know. I mean, at the moment, he is on some. I don't know. He's had his Wheaties every single day. I mean, he's riding up a storm. He's using AI a lot for data-driven analysis, but I know that Stephen handwrites every single line um, on his blog, and i- you know, well, he sees himself as a writer. I see myself as a writer. We think that's really important. Writing is thinking, and so outsourcing your thinking can be um, suboptimal. And I think the point about friction here is that we should be willing and able. I mean, look, it is great the idea that we will write something so polished that it could not have been any better. I mean, there are great stylists of language, and you're like, oh my god, if only I could write like Hemingway. Or, but actually, sometimes, and this is something I have seen repeatedly in our years in this business, is sometimes it's the throwaway post that generates the most discussion
Oh, yeah.
and attention.
It's impossible to
You
predict.
can spend all of your time trying to create the most polished thing, but then there'll be one stupid thing you said or you thought it was stupid, and that will be the thing that people are like, oh, that's the really good stuff. So I think the point of friction is giving, like, honestly, the reason that we first, Stephen and I, began to write blog posts was that we were wasting too much time editing each other's work. We would we would go back in this weird dance. It was like, dude, and at the time, it's like, there are two of us. We don't have time for this. And eventually we said, you know what? We will publish and be damned and let the internet come to us. And that will be part of, like, people can comment. And obviously, the golden era of RSS, RIP, oh my God, good times. But our view was, yeah, that actually it's those gnarly bits, those threads that people can pluck at and pull at. That's where things become more interesting. That's where you learn more. That's where you're collaborating and designing collaboratively. That to me, I think, is worth celebrating, fighting for, enabling, finding ways to continue doing in the era of AI.
I think it's fascinating how fast and how decisively the tables have turned against anything that sounds like it was generated by AI. It's like for a few months there, people were intrigued by it. Oh, that sounds snappy. Oh, that sounds sharp. Oh, that heightened contrast. And then all of a sudden it's just like, ah, I hate you. Like this really emotional, like they're telling you to go fuck yourself. You're like, oh, you would put AI at me, bitch. Like it's been really violent and satisfying. I am not immune. I too am feeling that. But I think that the lens that I am looking at this through is so I here's my working theory. Here's how it's currently in my head. I haven't written this down yet, but I think that when you're at work, there are a couple different lanes that you're in and when you're communicating with other
Hmm.
people. There is you're doing the work and the work needs to be high quality. Not perfect, but like, you stand behind it. There are times when higher quality is called for. Like if you are, doing an architecture decision record, or if you are proposing a product thing and it's a doc and it's like, this is kind of like it represents you professionally. Like you should
Hmm.
stand behind every single comment, regardless of how it was generated, whether you typed it yourself or whether Claude did it. There's no room for, oh, that was Claude, not me. There is zero room for that, right? And but people should have to deal with the document, whether or not they like that it sounded like Claude wrote it or not, right? Because it's about the work. It's not about in the same way that like someone's spelling errors might make you kind of, but it's about the work, right? It's
Hmm.
functional. And then there is relational communication, sometimes with a power dynamic, sometimes with a peer.
Hmm.
When you're giving a performance review or when you are giving someone hard feedback or something. And in relationship communication lane, there is no tolerance for it looking like someone pushed a button. And in fact, I think an acid test of the communication should be if the person receiving it knew exactly how you created it, would you be proud?
Yeah.
Would you stand behind it? Because I think that What's the difference between your manager telling you, giving you some feedback versus you reading it in a book? It's that they know you. They know you and they're hopefully invested in you and they want you to succeed and they also have power over whether or not you get a raise or not, right? So like it is appropriate. There are ways for managers to use AI to in lots of really great ways, but when it comes down to the relationship can't be outsourced.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, oh my god. I mean, obviously, for me, Charlie, I'm like, uh, that phrase, the bitter lesson, um, you know, it's about just throw more compute at it and it will be better than any of the other things that you tried in essence. Over time, compute will win. No, the real bitter lesson are all these fucked up bitter lessons that we're currently facing. Like
Yeah.
the bitter lesson is um, your frontier model bill at the end of the month. The bitter lesson is that actually, much though we might think we don't need to communicate, we do, and we
Yeah.
can't out. So I think we're sort of the bitter lesson is there are a lot of bitter lessons, and I don't think they're all about compute. I think that as you say that I mean uh just the bitter taste of shitty prose. And it's interesting because the first one, it was visual imagery, and I have to say, so my daughter, she is like super anti generative AI. She is going to be 16 in a few days. She is amazing. She is creative, she is smart, she is committed, she's like amazing. And just hates generative AI. She has caught me once using it was for a talk on prompt engineering, and she caught me. I was like, well, I'm gonna prompt an image for the she was super mad at me. And she said, Dad, I will always draw you slides if you ever but like you talked about the revulsion. Um and it just was so it for whatever reason, it's so clear with visual imagery. It just
Oh,
and
I have actually I've been going to town on I have been learning visual concepts, and I've always wanted to learn art stuff, and I've just
okay.
never yeah.
Are you gonna shoot all of that down and be like, my stickers are now better than they've ever been? And
They do, they are. They are
I've
so
AI
much
the
better
shit
than
out
they've
of
ever
them. Yeah, no, there is
and I'm
I
learning about typography and visual languages and, like,
right.
color balances and all these things, and I'm and, like, uh,
But Charity, the
this
thing is most people are not doing that. They're just generating slop.
well, that's always an option with
I know,
tools.
and of course slop was here before AI was here.
Claude was here before AI.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have been really on it. So for some reason, it's a lot easier for me to go on this journey with art and stickers than it is with code. Like, it's just too close to home, right?
Yeah.
So I'm chewing over. I want to write a piece about this, about how I learned to love the machine, and but also, like, look, if you support artists, support artists. You know, like I think it's a little bit ironic that the this debate has gotten distilled into the big bad AI companies versus the tiny little artists when it's actually more like big bad AI companies versus big bad media companies. And like
Yeah.
there are no virtuous actors in
Yeah,
this
no, I
particular.
mean, yeah.
If you
I
support artists, fucking support them, you
Yeah, no,
know?
absolutely. I mean, yeah, ASOS and H&M,
Come
uh,
on.
have been stealing
Come
design
on. Yeah.
from
This is the thing with AI. I there are lots of good reasons to hate AI, but I mostly see people hating AI for bad reasons. Reasons that are so clearly retroactively justified. They hate AI, that's the starting
Mhm.
point, and then they come up with the reasons why. And the reason it's so obvious is because AI is not the only offender in any of these categories, isn't even the largest offender in these categories like data centers and communities or, art threats or whatever. So, like, I feel like it delegitimizes the real pointy critiques of AI when
Okay,
we're
so
so pushing.
who is an independent artist that Charity Majors thinks people should go and look at their work and
Uh,
possibly buy a
yes.
sticker or who
Uh,
name a
so the first name that comes to mind is, it's not visual, it's a book, but I've been meaning to write. Kara Voorhees Reynolds wrote this amazing book called Priestess, and then a sequel, Illuminator, and Pilgrimess. And
Sorry,
I have had
Kara Voorhees Reynolds.
yes,
Okay.
so good
Is it this is fiction?
fiction. It's fantasy, and it's got like middle-aged female characters who are recovering from sexual abuse. I'm not making it sound amazing, but it's like poetic and beautiful and funny. And this is why I'm not in marketing, but they're so good.
I mean, you know, I the very awful truth is that there are not many women that are middle-aged that have not faced, um, I mean,
Yeah,
you have to
exactly.
be
And that's the
wha
thing. It's like
like,
nothing
I
but
don't know what kind of survivorship bias you have if you've emerged into middle age and you have never,
right,
uh,
right.
been,
Or just how oblivious you really are.
abused in some ways, so
Yeah. No, I'm making it sound like an after school special, but that's the point, is it's not an after school, it's just part of life. It's just one of many things that you deal with, and
okay.
it's just lovely.
Will I enjoy these books?
I think you would love them. Anyone who loves fantasy adventure books would love them.
Okay, okay. So that's a good one, supporting the artist. I've got a personal so I've got a friend that has done the iconography for my last couple of monkey gra conferences. She's called Gail Myerscough. She's got a really particular way of seeing the world, sort of like 1960s, very
Mm,
bright primary colors, loves the color orange.
mm.
She has some really nice postcards of like brutalist architecture. Um, Also likes to do drawings of like um record players or old tape machines or stuff like that. And she is awesome. So if you're listening, go and maybe check out Carr's work, check out Gail's work. Gail's amazing. Gail does like prints and everything, but she will do corporate commissions and everything else. She's amazing.
Gail, what's your name?
Myerscough, Myerscough,
Yeah,
and
found
she
her.
she's just
Great.
got a very particular sensibility.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And so yeah, I've been trying to do a better job of that, Charity, partly because and because when my kids were saying how shitty AI was, generative AI, and I'm like, well, I'm dealing with it in my domain. But one of the things was, but and to a point, capitalism, it's gonna. But I was
There's no
well, but I was gonna be like, oh, but you've all got ad blockers on, which means that artists are not being paid for their work, and they were like, Dad, that's Google, fuck off. So, so yeah, trying to make sure that I buy a print, or I recently bought my daughter a print. Just something on an ongoing basis. To your point,
no,
if you
I
want
will
to
say
support artists, then support
for
artists.
art.
Yeah,
I think that affirmative action is always better than attempting for purity by not doing things.
yeah, and also, oh my god, see, we're well off the track here. But one thing I do think that is a little to your point, um, it's the performative anger.
Oh
Like,
my god!
if well, I use Bluesky a lot, so I know about this.
I
It's it's when we're more we're more we spend a lot of time like articulating our rage about
Stoning our friends.
instead of just
Yeah,
doing the thing.
something about it. Yeah.
And this is, I think, well, yeah, it's not super great. The
No, it's not. I can't stand Blue Sky. It's just too much of the, "I'm angry about this today, and I'm angry about this person who is 2 like, just slightly off from my position, but I'm going to
Yeah,
be
I
angry."
think that's a problem for the network. But it's super interesting. Actually, I think the app proto thing and seeing the alternative blue skies. There's a Euro sky, there's black sky, which is like they moderate as they want for the black
Good.
community,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of weird and interesting. I'm sticking with it, but I know that being scolded is not a particularly great feeling, and just being performatively outraged. I think I'm trying to. I've always, yeah, I mean, look, there's a reason I do what I do as a researcher. I've always wanted to shine the light on work that is good.
Yeah.
Complaining about stuff is has its place. But also, yeah,
You need a little vinegar in the sauce, but you don't want a vinegar sauce.
absolutely. Um, okay, so I think we should, what you've got some further publishing coming up. I've got this like mad vision of you of Honeycomb creating, as I say, a harness for operational excellence going beyond observability. So that's just we'll see what happens. But I'm just imagining, all of the ideas you've got about the linkages between observability and everything else are codifiable and can begin to
Harness is the cool word of the day.
it absolutely is. I don't know what else to call it. A knowledge base. Knowledge management
That
is back. Knowledge management is
oh,
100% back. Oh, yeah.
by the way,
Everyone
did you see that Salesforce just bought Fin?
I did. Everyone is I mean, knowledge management is back. Ontology is the word,
Oh my god, everything is ontologies.
I don't see why we can't have, like, a honeycomb operational excellence ontology, but I'll stop banging that drum. You've got a couple of other publications coming, but what other than Canvas. Yeah, like what's super exciting about, or what is exciting you about where you are at Honeycomb right now, and like for the if any readers, watchers, whatever, manage to put up with us for this nearly an hour of Monk Chips and Charity Show, like what what do you what tell us about some Honeycomb stuff to finish up.
I I don't know how so one of the things that I'm most excited about is the timeline analysis
Mhm.
because the transaction is no longer the source of truth. And you need to be able to decide, I want to start my session here and end it there. Oh, wait, that's not where it ends. It ends over here. And you need to be able to trace any amount of stuff. So, one of the things that Honeycomb really shines at is, and this is a thing we've never learned how to really market, but it's the going from different altitudes, being able to go very high level all the way down to very individual requests at any point in between. Like we're the only tool that can do that.
Mhm.
And timeline analysis extends that horizontally in time as well. And it is super cool. We've also got some really exciting auto instrumentation stuff. So that I feel like for the first time ever, it is true that you can use instrumentation to write faster, not slower. Um, OTel, the common patterns are all trained by the LLM stuff. So we've got Claude skills. You just hook into a Claude skill, and as you're developing, yeah, all of the honeycomb traces. Uh, we've got we've got some really interesting agentic stuff. But I really think that Canvas and timeline analysis are they make let people's eyes light up.
Awesome. Love that for you. And if you say that the timeline stuff is something that you have never so far marketed effectively, I'm a big fan of your, well, relatively new CMO, certainly Julie Neumann, amazing. I reckon you'll fix that. I have high hopes for you on that. Um, Great. Okay, so those two specific things. And the thing, you're right, harness is sort of a bullshit term, but the harness to me, one of my definitions is like harness is all the things where you say no, not like that. So you're the model, and then the harness is all the things you're like, no, not like that. It's actually supposed to be like this. So it's like it's just that all of that sort of I don't know what to call it, ligature or whatever. But
Ooh, ligature is a good word.
but no, not like that. It's just like to hold it all together. Once you go out of alignment, you snap
Yeah,
back in,
discipline.
and that's I think, and discipline, and that's what comes out of like doing the work, scraping your knee, bashing yourself on the thumb, and all of that sort of stuff. And I think
Pain is nature's great teacher.
that is yes, it is, and that's what I look forward to, and I think will begin to scale your culture even further going forward. And that was why I used the term harness.
No, I wasn't critiquing. I think it's absolutely it's very of the moment, but it's a good word.
I mean, love language. Happy to see it keep on turning over. As I say, although yeah, knowledge management, that was a lot. I think that was before you were born, Charity. That was a long time ago that the industry was on that thing, but definitely back. Okay. So that was a Monkcast conversation, Red Monk, talking to Charity Majors of Honeycomb. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you have, then like, subscribe, do all of that stuff, share it with your friends, check out Canvas, think about timelines. Of course, it being Charity Majors, it's always about those traces and spans. And on that
Right.
happy note, thanks so much for joining us, Charity. And I'll hopefully see you in person soon because it
Yeah.
has been too long, my friend.
Yeah, it's been far too long.